Welcome, dear listeners, to a story that delves into the quiet corners of our minds where curiosity meets the truly unsettling. Imagine for a moment a sprawling ancient house, not one of those perfectly maintained, pristine estates, but a place imbued with history, with the ghosts of forgotten footsteps and the silent hum of generations past. This is where our story begins, with a man named Ryan, suddenly the unexpected heir to his eccentric Uncle Arthur's formidable mansion. Ryan had always known his uncle was a man of peculiar habits, but nothing could have prepared him for the sheer scale of Arthur's world, now his own. The house was a labyrinth of grand halls, dusty libraries, and forgotten antechambers. It smelled of old paper, polished wood, and something indefinably deep. For days, Ryan explored, his mind alight with the promise of this new vast inheritance. He felt a strange mix of exhilaration and a quiet, persistent awe. Then came the reading of the will. The lawyer, a crisp, efficient woman with spectacles perched on her nose, read through the usual clauses: assets, properties, charitable donations. But then she paused, her voice taking on a curiously formal inflection as she delivered a specific, non-negotiable codicil from Uncle Arthur himself. "And finally, to my beloved nephew Ryan," she intoned, her eyes briefly flicking to him over the rim of her glasses. "This estate with one unwavering condition. You must never, under any circumstances, open the red door in the basement." Ryan remembered the lawyer's gaze, a flicker of something he couldn't quite decipher. Was it pity? Warning? He'd nodded, a dismissive smile playing on his lips. A red door in the basement? What harmless eccentricity was this? Perhaps a hidden wine cellar or a storage space for Uncle Arthur's less presentable oddities. He accepted the condition with an easy shrug, more preoccupied with the sheer magnitude of his new life. Life in the mansion began to settle into a rhythm. Ryan spent his mornings in the sun-drenched conservatory, his afternoons lost in the sprawling library. But as the days lengthened into weeks, the thought of the red door began to seep into his consciousness. It wasn't a nagging thought at first, more a faint curiosity, like an unread chapter in a fascinating book. He'd found the basement entrance, a heavy wooden door tucked away behind the main staircase, leading down a flight of stone steps into the cool, damp earth. And there it was, at the very end of the main corridor, against a rough stone wall, a plain wooden door, painted an unmistakable deep crimson. It had no handle, only a heavy, tarnished brass latch. He'd stand before it sometimes, a cup of tea growing cold in his hand, wondering what could possibly be behind it. The absolute finality of his uncle's command, the specific mention in the will, lent it an air of profound significance. But the days passed, and Ryan, ever sensible, dismissed the urge. After all, he had a whole mansion to occupy him. Then the whispers started. It began subtly, an almost imperceptible murmur, carried on the faint currents of air that seemed to drift through the old house. Ryan would be reading, or simply enjoying the quiet, and he'd hear it, a faint, almost inaudible rustling, as if dry leaves were skittering across a distant floor. He'd attribute it to the house settling, or the wind playing tricks in the eaves. But gradually, the whispers grew clearer, more defined. It was no longer the house settling. It was distinct, low, and persistent, seeming to emanate from beneath him, from the very foundations of the mansion. And then, one unsettling evening, he heard it. His name. A soft, drawn-out whisper. Ryan. It was faint, yet unmistakable, as if breathed by someone standing just on the other side of a thin wall. His heart leaped into his throat. He sat bolt up in bed, straining to hear, but the sound vanished as it had come. The whispers intensified. They became a low, incessant murmur, a constant hum beneath the floorboards. Sometimes he'd hear fragmented words, too indistinct to make sense of, but undeniably human. Sleep became elusive. He'd pace the halls, trying to rationalize, to convince himself it was his imagination, the isolation, the sheer weight of the house. But the sound, that insistent, low hum, pressed in on him. And then came the screams. They weren't piercing, blood-curdling shrieks, not at first. They were muffled, choked, like someone desperately trying to scream into a thick pillow. They would rise from the basement, short, ragged bursts of pure terror, then abruptly cut off. Ryan would freeze, every muscle taut, the hair on his arms standing on end. Who was down there? Was Uncle Arthur's will a warning, not just a rule? The rational part of his mind screamed for him to call the police, but another, more primal part rooted him to the spot, paralyzed by an unshakable dread. The screams grew more frequent, more desperate, and then silence. Utter, complete silence. For 3 days, not a whisper, not a murmur, not a single sound disturbed the mansion air. The sudden void was more terrifying than the cacophony that had preceded it. It was the silence of something waiting. It was the silence of something having happened. Ryan couldn't take it anymore. The absence of sound was a louder torment than any scream. He felt a desperate, primal urge to know, to understand, to end the suffocating mystery. He walked, almost in a trance, down to the basement. The air grew colder with each step. The red door loomed before him, an imposing, silent sentinel. The brass latch, once merely tarnished, now seemed to gleam with a strange, malevolent light. His hand trembled as he reached for it. It was cool beneath his touch. He pressed down, and with a soft, almost regretful click, the latch gave way. He pulled. The door groaned open, revealing not a cavernous chamber or a terrifying prison, but a small, unassuming room. It was dusty, dimly lit by a single grimy window high on the wall. And in the center of this unremarkable space stood a mirror. It was an old mirror with a dark, ornate frame, its surface filmed with years of dust. Ryan stepped inside, the air still and heavy. He looked into the mirror, expecting to see his own weary, fear-haunted face. He did, but then his reflection did something impossible. His reflection smiled. A slow, wide, chilling grin spread across his mirrored face. And then his reflection spoke, its voice smooth, resonant, and utterly devoid of the fear that gripped Ryan. Finally, his reflection said. A cold dread, unlike anything he had ever known, washed over Ryan. He tried to scream, to turn, to run, but his limbs wouldn't obey. He felt a sudden crushing pressure, as if he were being pressed into the very fabric of the mirror. The world around him blurred, twisted. He saw himself, his other self, turn, his face no longer weary, but bright, exhilarated. Ryan pounded on the inside of the glass, his mouth opening in a silent scream, his eyes wide with horror as he watched his reflection, his doppelganger, his replacement, walk calmly out of the dusty room. The last thing he saw, the very last thing, was the other Ryan closing the red door with a soft click. And then, from the other side of the solid wood, hearing a clear, confident whistle receding up the basement stairs. Sound fades to silence slowly. Then a very gentle, reflective background drone begins. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? The cost of curiosity, the true nature of what might lie behind the things we are warned away from. Ryan's story is a profound and unsettling exploration of identity, of the thin veil between who we are and who we might become, or perhaps who might become us. It makes you wonder, How many red doors do we encounter in our lives, and what price might we pay for opening them? Are some secrets meant to remain untouched? And what if the deepest secret of all is ourselves? We'd love to hear your thoughts on Ryan's prediction. Have you ever felt an irresistible pull towards something forbidden? What do you think the mirror truly represents in this chilling tale? Share your insights in the comments below, and if you found yourself captivated by this story, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more tales that explore the mysterious edges of the human experience. Until next time, stay curious, but perhaps remain wary of the red doors in your own life.